Princess Lyra stood in the throne room of the Calarian palace, her hands trembling at her sides. The massive chamber felt cold, despite the warm light filtering through the crystal windows. Her father, Emperor Dravos, sat on his throne with a grave expression. She knew something terrible was coming. She could feel it in her bones. "My daughter," the Emperor began, his voice heavy with regret. "The war with humanity has ended. But peace requires sacrifice." Lyra felt her stomach twist. She had heard the stories of the war, of the brutal humans who fought without honor, who destroyed entire fleets without mercy. The Calarian Empire had lost badly. Everyone knew it, though few spoke of it openly. "What kind of sacrifice?" she asked, though part of her already knew the answer. "You will marry a human commander. It is the price of peace. Their government has agreed to a union between our peoples, and you have been chosen to represent the Calarian Empire." The words hit her like a physical blow. Marry a human? Those violent, unpredictable creatures? She had never even met one in person. Everything she knew about them came from military reports and propaganda broadcasts. They were supposed to be barbaric, aggressive, and dangerous. "Father, please," she whispered. "Anyone but a human. I will marry any lord you choose from our own people, any prince from the allied worlds, but not a human." Emperor Dravos closed his eyes. When he opened them again, she saw pain there. "The choice is not mine, Lyra. If we refuse, the war begins again. Millions will die. Our empire is weakened. We cannot survive another conflict with them." "Which human?" she asked quietly. Her father hesitated. That hesitation told her everything. "Commander Jake Holland." Lyra felt the blood drain from her face. Everyone in the galaxy knew that name. The Butcher of Proxima. The human who had destroyed the Calarian fleet at Proxima Station, killing thousands of soldiers in a single brutal attack. He was the most feared warrior in human space, known for his ruthless tactics and cold decisions. "No," she breathed. "Father, he is a monster. He killed our people without mercy. How can you ask me to marry him?" "Because we have no choice," the Emperor said firmly. "The humans want this union as much as we do. They want peace, and so do we. You are my daughter, Lyra, and I love you. But you are also a princess, and sometimes that means sacrificing our own happiness for our people." Lyra wanted to scream, to run, to do anything but accept this fate. But she was raised to understand duty. She had been trained since childhood to put the empire before herself. She looked at her father's tired face and saw the weight he carried. He was not doing this to hurt her. He was trying to save their people. "When?" she asked. 2 weeks. The ceremony will be held on Harmony Point, the neutral station between our territories. 2 weeks. 14 days until her life ended. Lyra bowed to her father and left the throne room, walking quickly through the crystal corridors of the palace. She needed to be alone. She needed to think. But she was not alone for long. Her handmaiden, Sarah, found her in the garden, sitting by the fountain where she had played as a child. Sarah sat beside her, without saying anything at first. She simply held Lyra's hand. "You heard?" Lyra finally asked. "Everyone has heard, Princess. The whole palace knows." "What am I going to do, Sarah? How can I marry that creature?" "They say he laughs while killing our soldiers. They say he feels nothing. No regret. No mercy." Sarah squeezed her hand. "I do not know what to tell you. I wish I had comforting words. But I will go with you. Wherever they take you, I will be by your side. If they allow it." The thought of having Sarah with her provided small comfort, but it was not enough to calm the terror growing in her chest. That night, Lyra could not sleep. She lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, imagining what Jake Holland must be like. Would he be cruel to her? Would he hurt her? The stories said humans were unpredictable, that their emotions made them violent. The next morning, Her younger brother Kale came to her room. He looked angry. "This is wrong," he said without greeting. "Father should refuse. Let the humans restart their war. We will fight them. And lose again?" Lyra asked softly. "Kale, I do not want this either. But Father is right. Our people cannot survive another war. Too many have died already. Times of cider Ganakam. We're mitted 5 or 7 tang. I might no to vetter people. Too many have died already. Then I will come with you. I will watch this human. And if he dares to hurt you, I will kill him myself. Peace treaty or not." Lyra smiled sadly at her brother's fierce protectiveness. "You cannot come, Kale. This is something I must face alone. Then promise me something. If it becomes unbearable, if he proves to be the monster they say, send word. I will find a way to bring you home." "Too," she promised, though she did not know if she could keep that promise. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. The royal tailors created her wedding dress, a beautiful gown in traditional Kalarian style with flowing fabric and silver embroidery. Looking at it made her feel sick. Her mother, the Empress, tried to prepare her for what was coming. She spoke carefully about marriage duties, about how to conduct herself with grace, even when afraid. But her mother had married for love, had chosen her father freely. She could not truly understand what Lyra was facing. "Perhaps he will be kind," the Empress suggested weakly. "Not all warriors are cruel in their private lives." Lyra did not believe it. She had seen the footage of the Battle of Proxima, had watched the recordings of human ships tearing through Kalarian defenses. Jake Holland had given those orders. He had destroyed them without hesitation. On her last night on her homeworld, Lyra walked through the palace gardens one final time. She touched the flowers she had helped plant as a girl, breathed in the familiar scents, listened to the sound of water in the fountains. Tomorrow, she would leave all of this behind. Tomorrow she would belong to a human, to a killer, to a man whose very name made soldiers flinch. She returned to her room and tried to sleep, but nightmares haunted her. She dreamed of Jake Holland as a dark figure with cold eyes and bloody hands. She dreamed of being trapped on a human ship, surrounded by aliens who spoke a harsh language and looked at her with contempt. She woke up several times, her heart racing, terror gripping her chest. When morning finally came, Sarah helped her dress in her wedding gown. The handmaiden worked silently, her own eyes red from crying. The dress was beautiful, but felt like a burial shroud. Lyra looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the frightened woman staring back. Her father came to escort her to the transport ship. He looked old suddenly, worn down by the burden of his choices. "I am sorry, my daughter," he said quietly. "If there was any other way." "I know, Father." The journey to Harmony Point took 6 hours. Lyra spent most of it staring out the viewport at the stars, wondering which ones shone on human worlds, which ones had seen the battles of the war. Sarah sat beside her, occasionally squeezing her hand but saying nothing. What was there to say? When Harmony Point appeared on the view screen, Lyra felt her last hope disappear. The neutral station was massive, built as a meeting place for different species. Today, it would be the place where her old life ended. The transport docked, and guards escorted her to the preparation chambers. She could hear sounds from the ceremony hall, voices speaking the harsh human language. They were already here. He was already here, waiting for her. Sarah adjusted her veil one last time. "You are the bravest person I know," the handmaiden whispered. Lyra did not feel brave. She felt terrified. But she was a princess of the Kalarian Empire, and she would face this with dignity, even if she was screaming inside. The doors to the ceremony hall opened, and Lyra began the long walk toward her future husband, toward the human they called the Butcher of Proxima, toward the man she was certain would destroy what remained of her life. The ceremony hall was massive and cold. Lyra walked slowly down the aisle, her legs shaking beneath her dress. On either side, she could see both Calarian and human guests watching her. The humans looked strange, with their round ears and varied skin colors. Some of them smiled at her, which only made her more nervous. What did human smiles mean? Were they mocking her? Through her veil, she could see the altar ahead. He was tall, much taller than any Calarian male. His shoulders were broad, and even in his formal uniform, she could see he was powerfully built. His face was stern, with strong features and dark eyes that seemed to look right through her veil. This was the Butcher of Proxima. This was the man who had killed thousands of her people. Lyra's steps faltered. For a moment, she wanted to turn and run, but her father's hand on her arm kept her moving forward. Emperor Dravos walked beside her, his face a mask of diplomatic calm. When they reached the altar, he formally placed her hand in Jake's. The human's hand was warm and rough. Lyra flinched at the contact, but Jake's grip remained gentle. She dared to look up at his face. He was not smiling. He looked almost as uncomfortable as she felt. The ceremony began. A Calarian official and a human official took turns speaking words about unity and peace between their peoples. Lyra barely heard them. Her heart was beating so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. Her hand in Jake's felt like it was burning. When it was time for vows, Jake spoke first. His voice was deep and rumbling, but surprisingly soft. I, Jake Holland, take you, Lyra, as my wife. I promise to honor this union and work toward peace between our peoples. The words were formal and careful. Lyra wondered if he had practiced them. Now, it was her turn. Her mouth felt dry. I, Lyra of House Dravos, take you, Jake Holland, as my husband. I promise to honor this union and work toward peace between our peoples. Her voice shook on every word. She could not help it. Fear had taken over completely. The officials declared them married. And suddenly, it was real. She was married to this human, this warrior, this killer. Jake turned to face her. For a terrible moment, Lyra thought he might try to kiss her, as she had heard humans did in their ceremonies. But instead, he simply offered her his arm. Are you all right? He asked quietly. Do you need a moment before we go to the reception? The question surprised her so much that she almost forgot to be afraid. He was asking her what she needed? She shook her head, not trusting herself to speak. Jake nodded and gently guided her toward the reception hall. The reception was a blur of faces and formal greetings. Lyra sat beside Jake at the head table, rigid and silent. Dignitaries from both sides approached them, offering congratulations and talking about the historic nature of their union. Lyra smiled and nodded when expected, but inside she was counting the minutes until this ordeal would be over. Jake tried several times to speak with her. Your dress is beautiful, he said at one point. She managed a quiet, thank you, but nothing more. Later he asked, what is your homeworld like? I have never seen Calaria. She gave him a short answer about the crystal palaces and gardens, her voice barely above a whisper. She could feel his frustration, but also something else. He seemed genuinely sad that she was so afraid. Why would he care? Monsters did not care about the feelings of their victims. Finally, after what felt like years, the reception ended. Jake stood and offered his hand. The transport is ready to take us to my ship, he said. My ship. The words sent fresh terror through Lyra. She would be on a human vessel, surrounded by humans. With no way to escape, Sarah tried to follow them, but a human officer stopped her. Only the commander and his wife are permitted on the transport, he said. Lyra looked back at her handmaiden, her last connection to home, and felt tears start to form. But Sarah smiled bravely and nodded. I will see you soon, princess. Be strong. The transport was small and efficient, built for speed rather than comfort. Lyra sat as far from Jake as the space allowed. He did not try to sit closer. Instead, he He spent the journey looking out the viewport, his expression unreadable. When they docked with the human ship called Horizon, Lyra was struck by how different it looked from Calarian vessels. Everything was angular and practical, made of dark metal rather than the elegant crystal and silver of her people's ships. The corridors were narrow and filled with human crew members, who stopped to stare at her as she passed. Jake noticed her discomfort. "The crew has been instructed to give you privacy and respect," he said. "If anyone makes you uncomfortable, please tell me." She nodded but did not believe him. What human would respect an alien they had defeated in war? Finally, they reached the captain's quarters. Jake opened the door and stepped aside to let her enter first. Lyra walked in slowly, looking around. The room was larger than she expected, with a sleeping area, a workspace, and what looked like a small sitting area. But it was still clearly designed for one person. Her heart began to race again. This was it. This was when he would show his true nature. She turned to face him, trying to prepare herself for whatever was coming. But Jake did not move toward her. Instead, he walked to the far side of the room. "I know this situation is difficult for you," he said carefully. "I want you to know that I have had the room modified." He pointed to a partition that had been set up, dividing the sleeping area in two. "I will sleep on that side. You will have privacy on this side. There is a lock on your side, if it makes you feel safer." Lyra stared at him, confused. "I do not understand." Jake met her eyes. "This marriage was arranged for political reasons. I understand that you did not choose this, and neither did I. But I want you to know that I will not force anything upon you. Your boundaries will be respected. You do not need to be afraid of me." The words sounded sincere, but Lyra could not let herself believe them. This had to be a trick. He was trying to make her lower her guard. "Why? Fime. She asked suspiciously. "Why would you do this?" "Because it is the right thing to do," Jake said simply. "You are not my enemy, Lyra. You are someone caught in the same political situation as me. The least I can do is treat you with respect." He moved toward a cabinet and pulled out some clothing. "These are your quarters now, too. I have had some Calarian furnishings brought in for you. The crew has been instructed to address you as Commander Holland or Princess Lyra, whichever you prefer. You have full access to the ship, except for the secure, military areas. If you need anything, please ask." Lyra watched him gather his things. He was leaving? "Where are you going?" she asked. "To give you privacy to settle in. I will be on the bridge. When you are ready to sleep, I will return, but I will stay on my side of the partition." He moved toward the door, then paused. "I know you do not trust me. I know you are afraid. But I hope that in time, you will see that I mean what I say." Then he was gone, and Lyra was alone. She stood in the center of the room, completely confused. This was not what she had expected. She had been certain he would be violent, demanding, cruel. Instead, he had been gentle, respectful, and had given her space. But she could not let herself believe it. This was probably how humans hunted. They made you feel safe, and then they attacked when you were not expecting it. She would not fall for it. She would stay alert. Lyra explored her side of the partition carefully. There was indeed a lock. The bed looked comfortable, made up with soft fabrics. On a small table, she found a data pad with information about the ship and its systems, translated into Calarian. He had thought of everything. She sat on the edge of the bed, exhausted from the stress of the day. Every part of her wanted to cry, but she held it back. She was a princess. She would not show weakness, especially not here. Hours later, she heard the door open. She tensed immediately, her hand moving to the lock on the partition. But Jake's voice came from the other side. "It is just me. I am going to sleep now. Good night, Lyra." She did not respond. She heard him move around on his side, heard the sound of him settling into bed. Then, silence. Lyra lay down, fully dressed, not daring to change into sleeping clothes. She stared at the ceiling, waiting for him to try something, but nothing happened. She heard his breathing slow and deepen. He was actually sleeping. Just sleeping. Nothing more. Lyra lay awake for a long time, confused and frightened, unable to understand what kind of game Jake Holland was playing. But eventually, exhaustion won, and she fell into a restless sleep, still waiting for the monster to reveal himself. Lyra woke up to the sound of quiet movement on the other side of the partition. She sat up quickly, her heart pounding, but then she heard the door open and close. Jake had left, without waking her or trying to come to her side. She sat there for a long moment, processing this. He had kept his word through the night. She got up and carefully explored her new home. The bathroom was strange. Designed for humans, but functional. She found that someone had left Calarian grooming supplies for her. Another small gesture she had not expected. After cleaning up and changing into fresh clothes from her packed belongings, she ventured out into the corridor. A young human in uniform jumped slightly when he saw her. "Good morning, Princess Lyra," he said respectfully. "The commander asked me to show you to the dining hall when you were ready." "If that is acceptable." Lyra nodded, and the young man led her through the ship's corridors. Other crew members they passed nodded politely or stepped aside to let her pass. No one stared rudely or made her feel threatened. It was strange. The dining hall was busy with crew members eating breakfast. The noise died down when she entered, and Lyra felt dozens of eyes on her. She froze in the doorway, wanting to run back to her quarters. But then a human woman approached her with a smile. "Princess Lyra, I am Lieutenant Kate Morrison. The commander arranged for Calarian meals to be prepared for you. Please, sit wherever you like." Lyra chose a small table in the corner, away from the crowds. Kate brought her a tray with food that looked surprisingly familiar. Not exactly like home, but someone had clearly tried to recreate Calarian dishes. The taste was not quite right, but the effort touched her in a way she did not expect. Jake did not join her for breakfast. She did not know if she was relieved or disappointed. Part of her wanted to see him again, to study him, to figure out what he was planning. The rest of her was glad to avoid him. After eating, Lyra wandered the ship's corridors. No one stopped her, though she noticed crew members keeping a respectful distance. She found an observation deck and stood there for a long time, watching the stars stream past as the ship traveled through space. She missed her home desperately. "Beautiful, is it not?" Lyra spun around. Jake had entered the observation deck quietly. He stood several feet away, his hands behind his back, looking out at the stars rather than at her. "I suppose," she said carefully. "I grew up on a colony world," Jake said. "We did not have fancy cities like Calaria, just farming settlements and mining operations. But we had skies full of stars. I used to wonder what was out there." He paused. "I never imagined I would end up here, married to a princess from one of those distant stars." Lyra did not know what to say. He sounded almost sad, regretful. She had not expected that. "I should let you know," Jake continued. "The ship's garden bay has been cleared for your use. I understand Calarians find peace in growing things. You are welcome to use it whenever you wish. I had some supplies brought aboard. Seeds, soil, equipment. I hope it helps you feel less trapped here." "Why do you care?" The question came out sharper than Lyra intended. "Why do any of this? Why not just lock me in those quarters and be done with it?" Jake finally looked at her. His dark eyes were steady and calm. "Because you are a person, not a prisoner. You deserve to be treated with dignity. I am Calarian, your enemy. The war is over, and you were never my enemy, Lyra. You were not at Proxima. You did not choose any of this." He moved toward the door. "The garden bay is on deck 4. Ask any crew member to show you the way." Then he left again, leaving Lyra more confused than ever. She went to the garden bay later that day and found it exactly as he promised. It was a decent-sized space with growing stations and proper lighting. Someone had left several containers of seeds labeled in Calarian. These were plants from her homeworld. Where had he even found them? Lyra spent hours in the garden bay that day, setting up growing beds and planting seeds. The familiar work calmed her nerves. This at least was something she understood, something she could control. As she worked, she tried to figure out Jake's game. But nothing made sense. Why give her all of this if he planned to be cruel? Days passed in this strange routine. Jake kept his distance. Always respectful. Always ensuring she had what she needed. He had communication equipment set up, so she could contact her family on Calaria. He had the lighting in their quarters adjusted to match her homeworld's spectrum. When she mentioned it bothered her eyes. He never demanded anything from her. Never even asked her to join him for meals. He simply existed on his side of their shared life. Polite and distant. It was driving Lyra crazy. She had prepared herself for a monster. This careful kindness was something she did not know how to handle. She started watching him more closely. Looking for cracks in the facade. She observed him with his crew. He was firm but fair, listening to concerns from even the lowest-ranking crew members. She heard him laugh once at something Lieutenant Kate said, and the sound was warm and genuine. Not cruel at all. One afternoon, Lyra went to the garden bay and found Jake there. He was kneeling beside one of her plants, carefully examining its leaves. He looked up when she entered, looking almost guilty. "I am sorry," he said quickly. "I know this is your space. But I noticed this plant looked sick yesterday, and I wanted to check on it. I did some research last night on Calarian botany." Lyra approached slowly. The plant was indeed struggling, and she had not known how to help it. "What did you find?" she asked. Jake pulled out a data pad. "According to this, your plant needs different soil nutrients than I originally provided. I ordered the correct supplements. They should arrive at our next port in 2 days. You researched Calarian plants?" "Why?" Jake stood up, brushing dirt from his hands. "Because it matters to you. I know how much you miss home. If I can make this easier, even in small ways, I want to." He moved toward the door. "I will leave you to your work." Lyra watched him go, her carefully built walls beginning to crack. That evening, she did something she had not done before. When Jake returned to their quarters, she spoke to him from her side of the partition. "Jake?" "Yes?" He sounded surprised to hear her use his name. "Thank you. For the plant research. You did not have to do that." There was a pause. "You are welcome, Lyra." After that, things slowly began to change. Lyra started eating some meals in the dining hall, though she still sat alone. She explored more of the ship, even visiting the bridge once. She watched Jake command his crew and saw something that surprised her. He was good at it. Not through fear or violence, but through respect. His crew clearly trusted him. The turning point came a week later. The Horizon received a distress call from a merchant ship under attack by raiders. Lyra was on the bridge when it happened, having gone there to ask Jake about some equipment for the garden bay. She watched as Jake immediately ordered the ship to intercept. "Battle stations," he called out. "Prepare weapons, but hold fire until I give the order. Our priority is protecting the merchant vessel and its crew." Lyra watched the tactical display as the Horizon approached the scene. The raiders were small fighters, faster than the Horizon, but less powerful. Jake coordinated the defense carefully, positioning his ship between the raiders and the merchant vessel. When he finally gave the order to fire, it was measured and precise. Not overwhelming force, but enough to disable the raider ships. "Open a channel to the raiders," Jake ordered. "Channel open, sir," Kate replied. "This is Commander Jake Holland of the human ship Horizon. Stand down immediately. We have disabled your weapons. If you surrender now, you will be treated fairly. If you continue to fight, we will be forced to destroy you. The choice is yours." Most of the raiders surrendered. A few tried to flee, and the horizon let them go. One raider made a desperate attack run, and Jake ordered it destroyed. But even then, Lyra heard him say quietly, "Check for life pods. If there are survivors, bring them aboard." The merchant ship was brought alongside the horizon. The crew was evacuated, some of them injured. Lyra watched from the bridge as Jake went personally to the docking bay to greet them. Later, she went down there herself, curious. She found Jake speaking with an elderly Calarian woman from the merchant crew. The woman was crying and thanking him for saving her life. Jake looked uncomfortable with the praise. "Anyone would have done the same," he said. "Not the pirates who attacked us," the old woman replied. "You are a good man, Commander Holland. May the stars bless you and your new wife." Jake helped arrange medical care for the injured and food for the shaken crew. Lyra watched him work, saw the care he took with each person, human and alien alike. This was not the ruthless warrior she had been told about. This was something completely different. That night, after the merchant crew had been safely delivered to a nearby station, Lyra did not go immediately to her side of the partition. Instead, she stood in the main area of their quarters, waiting for Jake to return. When he came in, he looked tired. "Long day?" she asked. He looked surprised to see her waiting. "Yes, but a good outcome. Everyone survived." "Jake, I need to ask you something." Lyra took a breath. What really happened at Proxima? Jake's expression closed down. He was silent for a long moment. Lyra thought he might refuse to answer. But then he moved to sit down and began to speak. "I was a junior officer then, not the commander. We received intelligence that a Calarian fleet was moving toward human colonies in the Proxima sector. Civilian colonies, families, children. The fleet's path was clear. They would reach the colonies before we could evacuate them." He paused. "I was the tactical officer. I ran the calculations. 8, 8, 8. The only way to stop them was to target the command ship, the one carrying the fleet admiral and most of the senior officers. And you destroyed it." Lyra said quietly, "I recommended the target. My captain gave the order. The command ship was destroyed. The fleet fell into disarray. They retreated. The colonies were saved." Jake looked at her, and she saw pain in his eyes. 3,000 Calarian soldiers died on that command ship. Most of them were conscripts who did not want to be there. They had families too, children too. I saved human civilians by killing Calarian soldiers. The propaganda said you laughed, that you celebrated. Jake's face twisted with something like disgust. "I have never celebrated killing anyone. That night, I could not sleep. I kept seeing the command ship breaking apart, kept thinking about the people inside. I still see it. Every night." Lyra studied his face and saw the truth there. This was not a monster. This was a man, haunted by an impossible choice. "The war would have killed those civilians anyway," she said slowly. "You chose your own people. That does not make you evil. It does not make me a hero either," Jake replied. "But that is what they made me. The humans turned me into a symbol of victory. The Calarians turned me into a symbol of cruelty. Neither is true. I am just someone trying to live with what I did." They sat in silence for a while. Finally, Lyra spoke again. "I was wrong about you." Jake looked at her with surprise. "What do you mean? I thought you were the monster from the stories." "But you are not. You are just a person, like me." After that conversation, something shifted between Lyra and Jake. The walls Lyra had built began to come down, piece by piece. She started joining him for meals occasionally. At first, they ate in silence, but slowly they began to talk. Small things at first, the weather patterns on their homeworlds, favorite foods, simple observations about life on the ship. Then the conversations grew deeper. Lyra told him about growing up as a princess, about the pressure to always be perfect, to always represent her people with grace. She talked about her love of gardens, how plants never judged her or demanded she be anything other than herself. She spoke of her loneliness in the palace, surrounded by servants and courtiers but never having real friends. Jake listened carefully to everything she said. He did not interrupt or try to fix her problems. He just listened. Then he shared his own stories. He talked about his childhood on a colony world called New Haven, about helping his parents farm difficult soil, about joining the military to protect his community when raiders started attacking outer settlements. He spoke of friends he had lost in the war, of the weight of command, of feeling trapped by his reputation. "Everyone sees what they want to see," Jake said one evening, as they shared dinner in their quarters. "The humans see a hero. The Calarians see a villain. No one sees me. Just Jake Holland, who is trying his best and hoping it is enough." "I see you now," Lyra said quietly. "The real you, I mean." Jake met her eyes and smiled. It was the first real smile she had seen from him, and it transformed his serious face completely. "Thank you. That means more than you know." Over the following weeks, Lyra began teaching Jake about Calarian culture. He was an eager student, genuinely interested in learning. He practiced speaking basic Calarian phrases, stumbling over the pronunciation in ways that made Lyra laugh. He asked questions about Calarian art, music, and philosophy. He even read some of the classical Calarian literature that Lyra loved. "This is beautiful," Jake said after finishing a famous Calarian poem. "Your language has such elegance. I wish I could read it in the original, rather than translation." "Perhaps I can teach you," Lyra offered. "I would like that very much." So they began language lessons. Lyra found that she enjoyed teaching him, enjoyed watching his face light up when he successfully read a passage or understood a complex phrase. In return, Jake introduced her to human culture. He played earth music for her, everything from classical symphonies to folk songs from different human cultures. He showed her human art, explained human history, shared human poetry. "Your people are so diverse," Lyra observed one day. "So many different cultures and languages and ways of living. I thought humans were all the same." "Most Calarians do," Jake replied. "Just like most humans think all Calarians are identical. It is easier to fight an enemy when you do not see them as individuals." Lyra nodded slowly. The propaganda on both sides was very effective. Too effective, Jake agreed. They were spending more time together now. Not just during meals, but throughout the day. Lyra would visit the bridge and sit quietly while Jake worked. Jake would come to the garden bay and help her tend the plants, following her instructions carefully. They played human and Calarian strategy games in the evenings. They talked about everything and nothing. And Lyra realized with surprise that she was happy. She had not expected to be happy. She had come into this marriage expecting misery, and instead, she had found companionship, maybe even friendship. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. One night, as they sat together reading, Lyra looked up from her data pad to find Jake watching her. "What?" she asked. "Nothing," he said quickly, looking away. "I was just thinking." "About what?" Jake hesitated. "About how different things are from what I expected. When they told me I would have to marry a Calarian princess, I thought it would be a cold, formal arrangement. Two strangers living separate lives. But you are not what I expected. Lyra, you are kind and intelligent and interesting. I find myself looking forward to our time together." Lyra felt her pulse quicken. "I feel the same way. I was terrified of you at first. I thought you would be cruel. But you have been nothing but respectful and patient. You have given me space to adjust, to learn to trust you." "I would never hurt you," Jake said seriously. "I hope you know that now." "I do," Lyra replied, and she meant it. The turning point came during a diplomatic function on Harmony Point. Both Lyra and Jake were required to attend a reception for various government officials. Lyra wore a beautiful dress in Kellarian style, but with colors that complemented Jake's formal uniform. They had coordinated without really discussing it, a sign of how in sync they had become. The reception was crowded with dignitaries from many worlds. Lyra stayed close to Jake, finding comfort in his presence. He introduced her to various human officials with pride in his voice. "My wife, Princess Lyra," he would say, and the way he said, "my wife," made her heart do strange things. They were talking with a group of ambassadors when Lyra noticed something wrong. A Kellarian delegate across the room was moving purposefully toward them, his hand reaching into his coat. Years of palace training made her recognize danger instantly. She saw the weapon emerging, saw it aimed at Jake. She did not think. She moved. Lyra threw herself in front of Jake just as the energy blast fired. Pain exploded in her shoulder, and she heard Jake shout her name. Then, everything became chaos. Security personnel swarmed the shooter. Jake's arms were around her, lowering her gently to the ground. His face was above hers, pale with fear. "Lyra, stay with me. Medical team, now." His voice was desperate. "Why did you do that? Why did you jump in front? Could not let him hurt you," Lyra managed to say, though the pain was overwhelming. "You could have been killed," Jake said, and she saw tears in his eyes. Actual tears. "Lyra, please. Hold on. Help is coming." Medical personnel arrived and began treating her wound. Through the pain, Lyra felt Jake holding her hand, refusing to let go even when the doctors tried to move him aside. "I am not leaving her," he said firmly. "She is my wife." They transported her to the medical bay on the horizon. The wound was serious, but not fatal. The energy blast had caught her shoulder rather than her chest, which the doctors said saved her life. Jake stayed by her side through the entire treatment, holding her hand, speaking softly to her when the pain made her cry out. When Lyra finally woke up after surgery, groggy from medication, Jake was still there. He was sitting beside her bed, his head resting on his arms, asleep from exhaustion. She moved her good hand to touch his hair gently. He woke immediately. "Lyra," he breathed. "Thank the stars. How do you feel?" "Sore, but alive." She tried to smile. "Did they catch the shooter?" "Yes. He was part of a faction opposed to the peace treaty. He wanted to kill me and restart the war." Jake's hand tightened around hers. "You saved my life. Why did you do it? Why risk yourself for me?" Lyra looked at him, at this man she had once feared so much. "Because somewhere along the way, this stopped being just a political arrangement. You became important to me. I could not stand by and watch you get hurt." Jake was silent for a moment. Then he raised her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "You have become important to me too, Lyra. More important than I thought possible. I care about you, not as a political necessity, but as a person, as someone I want in my life." "Even though I am Kellarian?" she asked. "Because you are Kellarian, because you are Lyra, because you are brave and kind, and you see me as a person, not as a legend or a monster." He paused. "I know this started as an arranged marriage, but it has become something real for me. You are the best part of my day. I look forward to our conversations, to your presence. I admire your strength and your gentleness. He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. Lyra helped him. "I think I am falling in love with you," she said softly. "Is that wrong? To love the man I was forced to marry?" "No," Jake said, his voice rough with emotion. "Because I think I am falling in love with you too. I have been for weeks. I just did not know how to tell you." He leaned forward carefully, mindful of her injury, and rested his forehead against hers. It was an intimate gesture, tender and full of meaning. Lyra closed her eyes, feeling safe and cherished in a way she never had before. "When you jumped in front of me," Jake whispered, "when I thought I might lose you, I realized how much you mean to me. I want this to be real. I want us to be real. We are real," Lyra replied. "This is real. What I feel for you is real." Jake pulled back slightly to look at her. "May I kiss you?" he asked. "I know I should have asked permission long ago, but I wanted you to be ready. To choose it freely." "Yes," Lyra said. "Please." He kissed her then, gentle and sweet, mindful of her injury. It was nothing like the cold duty she had feared. It was warm and right and perfect. When they parted, both of them were smiling. "I was so wrong about you," Lyra said. "About everything. You are nothing like the legends." "Neither are you," Jake replied. "I thought Calarians were cold and distant. But you are full of warmth and passion. You have changed everything I believed." Over the next few days, as Lyra recovered, their relationship deepened further. Jake barely left her side, caring for her with such tenderness that the medical staff teased him about being overprotective, but Lyra loved it. She had never felt so valued, so cherished. When she was finally cleared to return to their quarters, Jake carried her despite her protests that she could walk. "Let me take care of you," he said. "Please. You saved my life. Let me show you how much that means." That night, for the first time, they dismantled the partition that had divided their sleeping areas. They lay together in the same bed, Lyra carefully positioned, so her injured shoulder was comfortable, Jake's arms around her protectively. It felt natural and right, as if this was how things were always meant to be. "I love you," Jake said into the darkness. "I love you too," Lyra replied. "My husband." The word no longer filled her with fear. Now, it filled her with joy. News of the assassination attempt spread quickly through both human and Calarian space. But what spread even faster was the story that followed. Princess Lyra throwing herself in front of her human husband to save his life. Commander Jake Holland staying by her side. His love for her obvious to everyone who saw them. The cold political marriage that everyone expected had become something completely different, something real. Media outlets on both sides began covering the story. At first, Lyra was nervous about the attention, but Jake held her hand and told her they could use this interest to help create real change. "People are watching us," he said. "We can show them that the hate between our species is based on lies and propaganda. We can be living proof that humans and Calarians can not only coexist, but love each other." So Lyra began giving interviews, speaking openly about her journey from fear to love. She told reporters about her terror on the wedding day, about the legends she had believed, and about discovering that Jake was nothing like those stories. She spoke with honesty that struck a chord with people on both sides. "I was taught that humans were monsters," she said in one broadcast that reached millions. "I was prepared to spend my life married to someone cruel. Instead, I found the kindest man I have ever known. He was patient when I was afraid. He gave me space when I needed it. He respected my boundaries and my culture. He learned my language and my customs. He showed me that everything I was taught about humans was wrong." Jake did the same from the human side. In interviews and public appearances, he spoke about how Lyra had changed his perspective. "I fought against Calarians in the war. I saw them as the enemy, but Lyra taught me that they are people with families and dreams and hopes, just like us. Every Calarian soldier I fought was someone's son or daughter, someone's loved one. The war should never have happened. We let fear and propaganda turn us into enemies when we should have been seeking understanding." Their honesty was powerful because it came from personal experience. They were not politicians reading scripts. They were two people who had lived the journey from hate to love, and their sincerity showed. Young people on both sides started questioning the propaganda they had been taught. Social media filled with discussions about breaking down barriers and seeking peace. The response was not entirely positive. Some Calarians called Lyra a traitor for loving a human. Some humans criticized Jake for being soft on the enemy. But the positive responses far outweighed the negative. People from both species started sharing stories of friendships that had formed, of relationships that crossed species lines, of understanding that grew from actual interaction rather than propaganda. Emperor Dravos reached out to Jake personally, requesting a private meeting. Jake was nervous, but Lyra assured him it would be fine. When they met via secure communication channel, her father surprised them both. "Commander Holland," the Emperor said formally, "I owe you an apology. I allowed my government to turn you into a monster in the eyes of my people. It was politically convenient during the war, but it was wrong. You are not the villain we made you. And more importantly, you have made my daughter happy. As a father, that matters more than anything else." Jake looked stunned. "Your Majesty, I do not know what to say. Say you will continue to care for my daughter. Say you will help our peoples move past this hatred." The Emperor smiled. "And perhaps call me Dravos when we are speaking privately. We are family now, after all." The conversation marked a turning point. If the Calarian Emperor himself was willing to admit the propaganda was wrong, others could follow. Jake and Dravos began working together on joint initiatives. One of the most ambitious was the Harmony Initiative, a cultural exchange program that Lyra and Jake developed together. The program would bring young people from both species together to live and study on neutral stations. They would learn each other's languages, cultures, and histories. They would form friendships and connections that could bridge the divide between their peoples. The first group of participants was small, just 50 humans and 50 Calarians. But the program was designed to grow. Lyra threw herself into the project with passion. She helped design the curriculum, worked with educators from both sides, and personally greeted the first group of students when they arrived at Harmony Point. Jake was equally involved, ensuring the program had funding and political support from human leadership. The early results were promising. The students were nervous at first, carrying the same prejudices Lyra and Jake had overcome. But living together, studying together, and interacting daily broke down those barriers. Friendships formed. Understanding grew. By the end of the first cycle, many of the students said their best friend was from the other species. One young Calarian student named Vera gave an interview that went viral. "I was scared of humans before this program. I thought they would be violent and unpredictable. But my roommate Casey is the nicest person I know. She helped me when I was homesick. She taught me about Earth music. She is like a sister to me now. I do not see her as human or alien. I just see her as my friend." Similar stories emerged from the human students. The program was working. Jake and Lyra were proving that genuine connection could replace generations of hatred. They became symbols of hope for millions who wanted peace but did not know how to achieve it. Their own relationship continued to deepen. Lyra moved her things completely to Jake's side of the quarters, the partition now just a memory. They spent their evenings reading together, talking about their day, making plans for the future. The garden bay became a shared space where they worked side by side, growing plants from both their homeworlds. Jake proved to have a natural talent for gardening, which delighted Lyra. They traveled together to both human and Calarian worlds, giving speeches, meeting with leaders, and showing people that unity was possible. Some trips were difficult. On some Calarian worlds, protesters called Lyra a traitor. On some human worlds, people questioned Jake's loyalty. But they faced it together, supporting each other through the hard moments. The first anniversary of their marriage approached. They decided to hold a renewal ceremony, this time as a celebration of genuine love rather than political necessity. They wanted to show the galaxy how far they had come. The ceremony was planned for Harmony Point, the same place where they first married. Planning the ceremony became a joyful project. Lyra designed it to blend human and Calarian traditions, creating something new that honored both cultures. They invited guests from both sides, including their families, crew members, and students from the Harmony Initiative. The event would be broadcast across the galaxy. On the day of the ceremony, Lyra felt completely different from a year ago. Then, she had walked down the aisle in terror. Now, she practically floated with happiness. She wore a new dress that combined Calarian elegance with human design elements. Her father walked beside her again. But this time, he was smiling. "I am proud of you, daughter," Emperor Dravos said quietly. "You have done more for peace than any treaty could accomplish. You found love where we expected only duty." Jake waited at the altar, looking at her with such open love that Lyra felt tears forming. "A year ago, we stood here as strangers," Jake began. "We were afraid of each other, bound by duty rather than choice. But today, we stand here as partners, friends, and lovers. Lyra, you have changed my life in ways I never imagined. You taught me to see past my prejudices, to open my heart, to believe in a future where our peoples can live together in peace. I love you more than words can express." "Jake," Lyra said, her voice thick with emotion. "A year ago, I thought you were a monster. I thought I was marching toward my doom. Instead, I found the love of my life. You were patient with my fear. You respected my boundaries. You showed me that the legends were lies. You are the kindest, most honorable person I know. I am grateful every day that fate brought us together. I love you with all my heart." They exchanged new vows, promising to continue their work for peace, to love each other through all challenges, and to be living proof that understanding can overcome hatred. When the officiant pronounced them married again, they kissed to thunderous applause from humans and Calarians alike. The reception was a magnificent celebration. Music from both cultures played. Food from both homeworlds was served. Humans and Calarians danced together, talked together, laughed together. It was everything Jake and Lyra had hoped to create, a glimpse of what the future could be. During the celebration, a delegation approached them. Representatives from 3 other species who had been in conflict with each other. They asked for advice, wanting to know how to replicate what Jake and Lyra had accomplished. As Lyra explained about patience, respect, and genuine effort to understand, she saw hope in their eyes. "You have started something bigger than yourselves," the lead delegate said. "Your story has inspired our people to try for peace. If a human and a Calarian can fall in love, perhaps old enemies everywhere can find common ground." That night, after the last guests had left, Jake and Lyra stood together on the observation deck of Harmony Point, looking out at the stars. "We did it," Lyra said softly. "We actually changed things." "We did," Jake agreed, his arm around her waist. "And we will keep changing things. Together." Lyra leaned against him, feeling completely content. "Do you remember what you said to me on our wedding night? That you hoped I would see you? Meant what you said about respecting me? I remember. I see it now. I see all of it. You kept every promise. You gave me time to trust. You never forced anything. You let this become real naturally." Jake kissed the top of her head. "Best decision I ever made. Being patient, I mean. Waiting for you to be ready. Because what we have now is worth more than anything rushed or forced could have been." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Over the following months and years, the Harmony Initiative grew. More exchange programs started. Trade between human and Calarian worlds increased. Mixed marriages became more common, each one citing Jake and Lyra as inspiration. The couple worked tirelessly, never letting up in their mission to build lasting peace. They faced setbacks. There were still extremists on both sides who opposed unity. There were political challenges and cultural misunderstandings. But Jake and Lyra faced everything together, their love a constant source of strength. They proved that real change was possible, when people were willing to see past their prejudices. Their story spread beyond just humans and Calarians. Other species in conflict looked to them as a model. The couple became ambassadors not just for their own peoples, but for peace across the galaxy. They traveled to dozens of worlds, spoke to millions of people, and never tired of telling their story, because their story was important. It showed that hate was learned, and therefore could be unlearned. It showed that propaganda could be overcome with truth. It showed that even the most unlikely love could flourish if given a chance. And most importantly, it showed that enemies could become partners, that fear could become love, and that peace was always possible if people were brave enough to try. Years later, when historians studied the peace between humans and Calarians, they always began with Jake and Lyra, the reluctant bride and the haunted soldier who found each other in the most unlikely circumstances. Their marriage, begun in fear and duty, became the foundation for generations of cooperation and friendship. But for Jake and Lyra themselves, the greatest success was not the political change or the historical significance. It was the quiet moments together. The mornings waking up beside each other, the evenings in their garden. The simple joy of coming home to someone who understood them completely. "I am glad it was you," Lyra told Jake one evening as they tended their plants together. "Of all the humans in the galaxy, I am glad it was you I was forced to marry." Jake smiled. That warm smile that had become so familiar and dear. "I am glad it was you too. My wife, my partner, my love." Ah. And in the garden bay of their ship, surrounded by plants from two worlds growing together in harmony, they kissed. The princess who thought she was marrying a monster, and the soldier who thought he was beyond redemption, had found something neither expected. They had found love, understanding, and proof that even the deepest divides could be bridged. Their legend, the one that would be told for generations to come, was not about war or fear or duty. It was about two people who chose to see past their prejudices, who found courage to love across impossible boundaries, and who proved that sometimes the worst beginnings can lead to the most beautiful endings. And that was the best legend of all.